War is not only fought with bullets and missiles, it is fought with patience, with precision, and with timing. Last night, Ukraine reminded the world that sometimes the most devastating strike comes not in the heat of the moment, but in the calm, calculated silence that waits for the perfect opportunity. Ukraine's ability to turn patience into a weapon was on full display when it chose not to strike immediately, but to wait, to observe, and to plan with precision. In modern warfare, where speed and reaction often dominate strategies, Ukraine showed that timing can be just as lethal as firepower. Instead of rushing to destroy the Russian airbase when they first had the chance, Ukrainian forces monitored closely, gathering intelligence on the patterns of movement, the moments of vulnerability, and the routines of Russian command. Their decision was not born of hesitation but of discipline, a recognition that the most powerful strike is not the fastest one but the one that delivers the deepest wound. By holding back, Ukraine created a trap that would strike not only at steel and concrete but at the very heart of Russian leadership. The opportunity came when Russian commanders arrived at the airbase to mark a moment of authority and celebration. In wartime, such gatherings are intended to inspire loyalty, to remind soldiers of strength, and to showcase leadership's presence at the front lines. Yet these commanders, gathered in their own confidence, underestimated the reach and patience of their adversary. What they saw as a secure event became a glaring weakness, and Ukraine was ready to seize it. Ukrainian planners understood that attacking at the very moment of celebration would multiply the psychological and strategic impact. It was not simply about destroying a base, it was about sending a brutal message: no moment, no place, no leader is untouchable. When the strike came, it was devastating. Explosions ripped through the airbase, tearing apart both infrastructure and morale. What had been a scene of Russian commanders congratulating themselves turned instantly into chaos and destruction. The very leaders who were supposed to represent order and authority were thrown into disarray, some injured, some killed, and all humiliated. This was no accident of war. It was a carefully orchestrated decision to strike at the perfect time. Ukraine's intelligence network had mapped out not only the physical vulnerabilities of the base but also the emotional vulnerabilities of its enemy, and in one strike both were exposed. The brilliance of the operation lies not just in its execution but in the patience it required. Any commander under pressure might have taken the shot earlier, content to simply cripple a base or disable aircraft. But Ukraine waited, calculating that the true value lay in timing, in the psychological score that would come from striking leaders while they believed themselves safe. This restraint turned a standard military operation into a masterstroke, one that will be studied in military academies as an example of precision warfare and psychological operations. It showed that Ukraine is not merely reacting to Russia's aggression, it is dictating the tempo, forcing its adversary to live in uncertainty and fear. This attack also redefines the way Ukrainian forces are perceived. It proves their reach, their intelligence capabilities, and their ability to outthink an enemy often assumed to be larger and stronger. In truth, strength without awareness becomes weakness, and Ukraine exploited this truth to perfection. By waiting for the celebration, they struck not only at material targets, but at the confidence of Russian leadership, turning a routine event into a battlefield defeat. Every Russian soldier and officer who hears of this strike will carry the memory of what happened, that their leaders are not safe, their bases are not secure, and their enemy is always watching. What Ukraine achieved was not just a successful operation but a story, one that spreads faster than the flames fuming that airbase. It is a story of cunning over complacency, patience over arrogance, and resilience over brute force. In war, moments like these can shift the tide because they remind one side of their vulnerabilities while strengthening the resolve of the other. By waiting for the celebration and striking at the heart of it, Ukraine transformed a single strike into a symbol of strategic brilliance and unbreakable determination. The destruction of the Russian airbase was not simply another battlefield report, it was a calculated blow that resonated across the entire conflict. When the strike was launched, it did far more than damage buildings or scatter debris. It weakened the very framework of Russian military operations in that region. The loss of aircraft and equipment is measurable, but the true impact of the operation stretches far beyond the wreckage. Air bases are not only launch points for missions, they are also symbols of control, hubs of coordination and safe zones for leadership. By targeting such a critical site and timing the attack when senior commanders were present, Ukraine ensured that the consequences would ripple through multiple levels of the Russian war effort. The immediate impact was clear. Reports indicated that several aircraft were destroyed or severely damaged, cutting into Russia's ability to conduct reconnaissance, launch strikes, and transport personnel and supplies. Aircraft represent not only significant financial investments, but also critical tactical assets. To lose them suddenly in one strike is a setback that cannot easily be repaired, especially when sanctions and supply issues already restrict Russia's ability to replace or repair damaged equipment. Every destroyed plane is not just metal lost, it is air support denied to ground troops, missions delayed, and pressure eased on Ukrainian forces in other sectors of the front. But while equipment loss is significant, the strike's deeper impact lies in what it did to Russia's chain of command. Commanders gathered at the airbase were caught off guard and some were killed or injured. This kind of disruption at the leadership level creates confusion, slows decision-making, and shakes confidence among both officers and soldiers. Armies rely on a steady flow of orders and assurance from their leaders. When those leaders are struck down or forced to focus on their own survival, the entire structure beneath them falters. Ukraine's operation, therefore, was not only about disabling planes but about slicing into the nerve center of Russian operations. A base once used to project power has now become a reminder of vulnerability. Another layer of consequence lies in morale. For soldiers stationed at or near the base, the strike was a hawkwave of fear. They witnessed firsthand that even their secure zones could be targeted with deadly precision. For those further away, hearing about the attack creates paranoia. If commanders at a well-defended airbase are not safe, where is anyone safe? This psychological pressure eats away at discipline and confidence. Troops begin to second-guess their leaders, to wonder if their superiors are competent, and to feel that the war effort is slipping away from control. This erosion of morale cannot be underestimated as it weakens the fighting spirit from within, making future operations harder to sustain. Strategically, Ukraine's decision to target the base at that specific time was a statement to Russia and to the world. It signaled that Ukraine has intelligence capabilities sharp enough to track high-level commanders, patience to wait for the perfect opportunity, and precision to strike exactly when the enemy is most exposed. For Russia, this means constant uncertainty in the future. Commanders can no longer gather confidently, bases can no longer host secure meetings, and every attempt to showcase authority risks becoming a death trap. For Ukraine's allies and supporters, the operation reinforces the image of a nation not only capable of defending itself, but capable of outsmarting and outmaneuvering a larger adversary. The international implications also cannot be ignored. Strikes like this are closely observed by foreign governments and militaries, and the success of such an operation strengthens Ukraine's case for continued support. It demonstrates that advanced weapons, intelligence sharing, and logistical aid from allies are not wasted but are being put to devastatingly effective use. Each successful operation proves that Ukraine is not simply holding ground, but actively degrading Russia's ability to wage war. In the grand scope of the conflict, the strike represents a turning point in the local balance of power. With reduced air support, disrupted command structures, and shaken morale, Russian forces in the area face new limitations. Ukraine has shown that it can reach deep into enemy territory, strike at leadership, and reshape the battlefield with a single well-executed attack. The destruction of the Russian airbase will not only slow immediate operations, but will force Russia to spread resources thinner, reinforce security at other bases, and operate with a constant fear of another devastating surprise. What began as a single strike became a strategic earthquake, shifting the terrain of the war not in miles of territory gained but in the weakening of Russia's ability to sustain its campaign. Ukraine's strike on the airbase will be remembered not as an isolated event but as a decisive move that crippled assets, rattled leadership, and turned psychological warfare into tangible battlefield advantage. The strike on the Russian airbase did more than destroy aircraft and infrastructure. It shifted the very nature of the war into a new phase where psychology became as important as weaponry. For months, Russian commanders have tried to present an image of strength and control, showcasing their presence at bases and gatherings to reassure their troops and project dominance. But by timing the attack to coincide with a Russian celebration, Ukraine stripped away that illusion in one violent moment. The commanders who were supposed to inspire confidence became symbols of vulnerability, and the event that was meant to show strength instead turned into an embarrassing reminder of weakness. This was not just a strike against a physical target, it was a strike against the mind, against morale, and against the fragile confidence that holds armies together. Psychological warfare has always been a powerful tool, but Ukraine elevated it here with surgical precision. By waiting for the right moment, the Ukrainian forces ensured that the impact was not only material but deeply emotional. Soldiers on the ground who saw their leaders caught in the chaos of the hate will remember the fear, the helplessness, and the sudden realization that even their commanders are not immune to danger. Fear is contagious, and in war it spreads faster than any weapon. Once doubt takes root in the minds of soldiers, it becomes harder to maintain discipline, harder to inspire sacrifice, and harder to sustain the will to fight. Ukraine's strike planted those seeds of doubt across Russian ranks, and their effects will linger long after the smoke has cleared. The symbolism of the attack also carries weight beyond the battlefield. Celebrations in war are meant to mark victories, to solidify unity, and to remind troops why they are fighting. By targeting a celebration, Ukraine demonstrated that Russia cannot enjoy even a moment of triumph without risk. Every gathering, every show of strength, now becomes a potential vulnerability. Commanders must wonder if their movements are tracked, if their locations are compromised, and if their attempts at morale boosting will turn into moments of disaster. This forces a culture of paranoia where leaders isolate themselves, avoid gatherings, and fail to inspire their troops face to face. In time, this erodes the bond between leadership and fighters, creating fractures that weaken the entire war machine. Ukraine's operation also amplified its own image as an intelligent and unbreakable force. The narrative that emerges from such strikes is not of a small nation struggling against a larger one, but of a nation capable of outsmarting, outmaneuvering, and outlasting a powerful aggressor. For the Ukrainian people and military, the attack becomes a symbol of pride, a reminder that resilience and cunning can overturn the odds. For Russia, it becomes a humiliation replayed in reports, rumors, and conversations among soldiers who cannot escape the memory of what happened. This dual effect, boosting Ukrainian morale while undermining Russian confidence, is the hallmark of successful psychological warfare. The strike also reaches into the political dimension of the war. For Russian leadership, the embarrassment of losing commanders and assets during a supposed moment of pride damages their credibility. How can they claim to be in control when their own forces are blindsided in their strongholds? For Ukraine, the message to allies is clear: support us and we will continue to use every resource effectively, striking not just at hardware, but at the very will of the enemy. This reinforces global confidence in Ukraine's capacity to wage an intelligent modern war. In broader terms, this event demonstrates that wars are not only decided by territory but by perception. If Russian soldiers believe they are constantly under surveillance, if commanders feel unsafe in their own bases, and if leaders are forced to retreat from public appearances, the war shifts in Ukraine's favor without even requiring continuous bombardment. Ukraine has shown that it can weaponize uncertainty, making Russia bleed not just through losses but through fear. Every future Russian gathering will be haunted by the question, is Ukraine watching and will they strike? That kind of psychological shadow is almost impossible to escape. The strike on the airbase is therefore not just a tactical win, it is a turning point in the psychological war. It revealed that patience and timing could magnify the effects of a single operation far beyond its physical damage. It reminded Russia that the battlefield is not only made of trenches and cities but of minds, fears, and perceptions. Ukraine's move transformed a simple attack into a symbol of dominance in psychological warfare, a demonstration that the war is as much about breaking the enemy's spirit as it is about breaking their defenses. In this, Ukraine showed that even against a larger and heavily armed foe, cleverness and psychological mastery can rewrite the balance of power. In war, victories are measured not only by the ground gained but by the fear instilled, the confidence broken, and the message delivered. Ukraine's strike on the Russian airbase was more than a military operation. It was a statement of resilience, intelligence, and unshakable will. As the smoke rises from the ruins of that celebration turned nightmare, one truth is clear: Ukraine is not just defending its land, it is rewriting the very rules of this war.